What we're going to do is we're going to look at real numbers. When we start off the algebra course, it's really important to know some of the definitions, and the definition of numbers is where we usually start. What we have are natural numbers, and natural numbers are numbers that start with 1, 2, 3, and they continue 100, 200, 1,000. So that right there is where we're going to put it in natural numbers 1, 2, 3, and so on. Now, when we're talking about the next number, it would be whole numbers. And whole numbers are just like natural numbers, except they start with 0. Notice that whole numbers with the Venn diagram contain natural numbers. So the only whole number that's not a natural number would be 0. Our next one would be integers. Once again, notice that integers contain whole numbers and natural numbers. So when we're looking at integers, we would include -1, -5, -56, something along those lines. Then we move into rational numbers. Rational numbers include the integers, but we also include fractions and decimals that we know the ending digit. What that means is we have 2/3, that would be fractions. Decimals would be 0.45. The ones that we know the ending digit, we could have something like 0.333 repeating. That would be also a known digit. Irrational would be unknown digits. An example would be 1.46395 ... Notice I don't know what the next number is versus this next one. I know the next one is 3. That's why one is a rational and the other one is a irrational. The most famous irrational number would be the number pi. Another example would be the square root of 2. If you were to put that in a calculator, you would get an irrational number. Now, all numbers in this course are going to be real numbers. When you move into Algebra 2, we start talking about imaginary numbers, but we won't get into that today. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to fill in our Venn diagram for example 1, and we're going to start with -6. -6 would be an integer. Then what we have is 5. 5 would be a natural number. 0 is our only whole number because all the other numbers are going to be natural numbers. That would be whole numbers. Square root of 9, that's a tricky one. The square root of 9 is 3. 3 is a natural number, so that means that the square root of 9 is also a natural number. The square root of 11 is an irrational number. We don't know the ending digit for that one. We have -6/2. Once again, that simplifies to -3, which is an integer. So that means -6/2 would also be an integer. 8/3 does not simplify nicely. So we're going to keep that as a rational. Then what we have is 4.1111. I know the next number is 1. So that would be a rational number. And our last one, I don't know what the next digit is. 1, 2, 4, 7, 3. No idea. So I'm going to treat that as a irrational number. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at our prerequisite skills. So this is stuff that you should have done over the summer, practice with, or know from pre-algebra. We're going to be looking at adding integers. Once again, integers are positive and negative whole numbers. So with these two, we have -8, -2. That would be -10. Our next one, we have -4 and 1. If you're having difficulty with this, what you can do is you could put plus and minuses to represent the numbers. Here we have 4 negatives. Here we have 1 positive. A negative and a positive cancel. They become 0. So what we're left with is -3. Here we have 6 negatives. And we have 3 negatives. And so if you look at that, that would be a total of 9 negatives. For the next one, we have 2 positives. We have 5 negatives. Notice that the positive and the negative, they become 0. So what's left over is a -3. And for this next one, we have 9 negatives and 12 positives. That's going to be a +3. So we're going to write down a rule for the above pattern. What I hope you notice is that same sign, we add. And different signs, we subtract. Notice that with this first example, the signs were the same. We added those two and got -10. Signs were different. We subtracted and got -3. Signs the same, -9. Signs different, we subtracted, got -3. Signs different, subtracted, got a +3. The reason that this is positive and this one is negative is notice that the larger number is positive, the larger number is negative. Now, when we're talking about subtracting, what we're really doing is talking about adding a negative. Now, if there's two negatives, what we do is we change it to a positive. So looking at this, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that subtraction sign and I am going to change it to a positive. I don't like that green. Let's try the orange. So we have -3 plus -1, and we have the same sign. So we're going to add. I have 2 minus 5, so I'm going to put 2 plus a -5. Different signs. I subtract and get a -3. Notice I have subtracting a negative. I like to turn it into a positive. So that would be different signs. I subtract. Two negatives make a positive. Negative, negative make a positive. Different signs I subtract. Two negatives make a positive. So that would be a +1. For the next one, if we subtract a negative, it becomes a positive. And that gives us 0. 1 plus a -2. Different signs I subtract. If I subtract a negative, it becomes a positive. So that would be -6. Subtract becomes a positive. That would be +1. And then what I have, if I subtract, remember what I'm really doing is adding -4. Same sign. What I do is I add. So what we're going to do next is order of operations. Don't peek at the answers. And with order of operations, remember we do parentheses first, exponents next, multiplying and dividing, and then adding and subtracting. Once again, in a good pre-algebra class, you should be very comfortable with order of operations. We always forget over the summer, so it's always good to refresh. 10 minus 6 times 3. First we multiply. So that would be 10 minus 18. And remember just what we talked about. That would be the same thing as adding -18. So that would be -8. Here, whenever we have division and multiplication, it always goes from left to right, just like reading a book. So 6 divided by 6 is 1 times 5 gives us a 5. And then for our last one, first thing that we're going to do is parentheses, -2. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do exponents. -2 squared is 4. I'm going to multiply, and that gives me 4 plus 32, as I already have written. And then that right there gives me a 36.